Welcome, Kaleidoscope. This is what this video is about. I got so excited at this little ditty right here that I had to just share it with you straight through. Typically, I begin things in a different way, but this kaleidoscope was such a challenge that wouldn't let me sleep. I had to run down, and I left this. The audio didn't record, so I'm recording secondary audio while I watch this with you. I am indicating to you that I am letting samples go up to almost 300 samples in preview at nearly a full HD size resolution. These samples of 300, 380 going up to 400 still leave quite a bit of shading off on the side. What I was doing was so cool that I just decided I'm going to start recording right now. And then I lost all the audio. And I said some pretty funny stuff. It's a real pity that you weren't here with me. I begin like this. Hello. Hi. Hola. Blender 2.79, but I'm sure this can work in other versions. It's just nice to have the best cycles renderer engine that we have. See this lamp? We're going to get rid of it. We don't need it. We're going to use an emission material. The camera, I'm going to Alt-G and Alt-R to put it in the center. I'm going to rotate X 90 degrees, push it back on the Y, maybe 3 Blender units. I'm just telling you this all from memory. It's amazing, isn't it? And now, T for the tool shelf. It's kind of fun. And I'm going to create a cylinder. Shift-A, Mesh, Create. I'm going to rotate that 90 degrees on the X-axis also. And the depth is going to change from 2 to 6. I feel like a commentator. 32 to 3 for the vertices. We get a triangle out of that, and we need to rotate this triangle so its flatness is at the top. So the rotation of Y goes 60, not 180. Save yourself the extra turns. You can just go 60 to get that point down at the bottom. That was what I found to be the best way to reflect things. Nothing on cap fill type. And now create a plane. It'll happen at 0, 0, 0. Go into edit mode with your tab key, RX90. And here I say it's important to have the plane exceed the physical boundaries of, and then I forget what it's called. And I gracefully try and sidestep out of that. And I take a look, and I see it's called a cylinder, and then I start all over. So I sound like I know what I'm talking about. Here, the cylinder, which is a diameter of 2 units, and the plane, which is a measure of 2 units across, meet at the bottom, because although there are only 3 sides on that cylinder, it still remembers that it has a radius of 1. Anyhow, keep the plane outside the shell of cylinder for best results. Here, I tell you, move it anywhere from 2 to 3 Blender units forward on the Y-axis. Get it away from the camera. And I think I have some kind of discussion about the camera, which is needless. And, oh yes, okay, Shift F5 up in your outliner will get you the view, your 3D view. Yep. And then I hold still for a few seconds there. Oh, here it comes. Okay, so now, oh yes, scale with the letter S, and then Shift Y. So we're scaling the size of our cylinder down. So we're looking through a narrow 3-sided tube. When we hit Shift Y, we can strain the scaling to being only X and Z. I want to make sure that this little point right here, this is where I really get just a little OCD. That little point right there, 2-dimensional point in space, is where the camera records film. Once you pass by that 2-dimensional space on the camera icon, avatar thing, then doop, you have gone past the center of the film plate, or whatever it should be called in Blender. I got that out of my system. And then I decide I want to prevent straight lines from being straight lines. So I change to panoramic, and I put a lens to 28. I don't worry about anything else. I can only view this with a Shift-Z render view on my 3D view up there in the corner. I always have my light paths turned to 0 so that I could work faster in Blender. If I need full global illumination, I just pull it down and click it without having to say it. And final thing, come on, do it. Do it. Oh, yeah, I got to hit Shift-Z twice to get out and go back in to render with the adjusted settings. And now I just slide the preview samples from whatever they are down to 0. When you have them at 0, it just renders samples infinitely in preview, so you get a sense of how long you'll need to, how many samples you'll need in a final render. Now what the hell have I done? All right, okay, plane. Yes, going to the plane, putting material, calling it jewels. Remember when you look through kaleidoscopes and you see jewels and shiny little things? Well, we're going to do an emission material. That emission material, Shift F3 in your 3D view here. That emission material, yes, come on, catch up, man. There we go. We're going to add, with Shift A, the texture of Vournois. We're going to change it from intensity to cells. Vournois. I've never ordered that before at a restaurant, so I don't really know how to say it. I'm usually too embarrassed. Changing texture coordinates, object, feeding into the mapping. I used Control-T on my Node Wrangler, switching mapping to texture. You can see that. And already in the preview, it's simple. So I move right along, and now it's time to put a material on the cylinder. So easy. This is why I had to start recording without testing that my audio is working. It's just so damn easy. Ready? That's it. It's done. Thank you for watching. I hope you find that as attractive as I do. It's amazing. I switch back over to the plane. Ah, it's so beautiful. I'm looking at it now like in a third-person point of view. I'm not pushing buttons or anything. It's just, that is pretty. I make a few jokes. I talk about things. Oh, and I test here. I talk about that plane being inside the boundaries of the cylinder. What I had not tested previously was moving the plane farther out. I had shifted it to be out of the way of the kaleidoscope, and it gets just, white edges reflected in. The definition of a kaleidoscope says 2 or more mirrors reflecting each other in a pattern. This is 3 mirrors, and I give you all sorts of reasons why you should use 3 instead of others, because I tested them. And when I finally got the right look I was looking for, I recorded. And now I'm still saying that. Look at that path tracing. Look at that path tracing sample is already up to 1,300. Yeah, there I discussed the 2 mirrors on the bottom. And there I hit Shift Z again. And now I don't remember what I was saying. I talk a lot. Come on, get moving. What am I going to do? Oh, I'm going to animate this eventually. I'll stick with it. God, how long is this? 17 minutes. Didn't have to be 17 minutes. Could have been shorter. Look at Cycles trying to keep up with that move. Experimenting with that distance. It's just muddy and unnecessary out there. Kind of a bug's eye view, isn't it? So now pushing it back closer to the front of the cylinder. I think this time I didn't even touch the cylinder, which is interesting. I didn't notice that then. I'm noticing it now. Those are pretty. Gosh. A scale of 10 makes it a little too busy. It's like sand, but not... I don't know. I'm not sold on 10. When we use the generated coordinates... 10 to 5. There we go. There's a big lesson about the texture coordinate type. If you are still with us in this video, the generated texture coordinates are coming out of a special corner. The object texture coordinates are coming out of the center. The texture coordinates from the object tend to be a little tighter. From generated, which I'm pulling right now, they tend to be larger because the origin of texture space is down in a corner. So if I rotate the Z, I am actually rotating that texture from a farther point. So the, boy, those colors, they're just, what a good idea this was. Now I do the same rotation, more or less, from the object texture coordinates. I'm just totally wowed. I hope you like it too. Come on, rotate it. Here we go. Now I'm rotating it up, and the results are different because the center of that rotation, we're kind of right on top of the center of that rotation. You see what happens. If you've never used a kaleidoscope before, this is probably, like, I'm probably the most amazing person you've ever heard on the internet. And yes, it's all true. Right-click and select insert keyframe right there for rotation. And then I make a little mistake here. I go back with F3 to the node editor. I left-click the mapping node so that I can access with Shift F6 its keyframe on the graph editor. I love those shortcuts. And the generator under modifiers, which I pulled up with the N key on the keyboard, I put this way down. I do this a few times. The final result, if you're watching on a small screen, is 0.01. And that makes me happier than just about anything else. And what little I remember of this point in time, because for me it's getting late. Yeah, just going back and forth through it, having a dandy time. Okay. Looking at it full screen, this is not the most exciting version. I take a look in those corners because that natural vignetting is actually Blender bouncing. All these reflections, and finally just picking up so much noise that it results in noise. So here, I render it without denoising. Here, I render it with denoising at 150 samples. There's the denoising, and it's awful. Here, I tinker with the settings of denoising, changing the radius from 8 to 4, and it's awful. And here, I change the samples to 300 and restore the radius for denoising to 8, which is its default. That is good enough for the sake of example, I say, and I agree. Most everything I do is good enough for the sake of example. Next time, I'll double check my audio. I keep saying it because it's frustrating. I enjoy commentating, but now I realize how much empty movement takes place sometimes. Scale is going from 2 to 5, and that is a file that I believe I save 2 to 5 because I thought 10 was too busy. That's so pretty. I do hope that some of you found this useful and that you meet with success. You can use this in something psychedelic, and if you do, please won't you tell me? Certainly, once again, thanks for watching.